IVM.
I've often looked at this brand and wondered, how do they even manage such a universal and a ubiquitous brand? How is this brand so seamless across so many categories, payments, search, maps, and even devices? I've also wondered, if you're almost the default platform for the world, what responsibilities does it bring upon you? Do you only look at yourself as a technology platform, or do you see yourself as a force for change? Welcome to Speakeasy with Dheeraj Sinha, and today I'm talking to Sapna Chadha, Senior Marketing Director, Google India and Southeast Asia. Sapna and I are going to chat a lot about managing the brand Google, but also about her as a person and the leader that she is. Sapna is one of the top business leaders of Asia, looking after the interests of the brand Google in this part of the world. But what fascinates me about Sapna is the passion that she has for building businesses with impact. Among the many feathers in her cap, she is the force behind Google's Internet Sathi program, which has touched over 30 million women. Sapna, welcome to Speakeasy with Dheeraj Sinha. Hi, Sapna. I thought today, we'll generally broadly talk, of course, about Google as a brand and how do we manage a brand such as Google, or do you even manage, or it kind of manages itself, being such a powerful and a strong brand across markets, which is what you do as leader in marketing in the brand. But I also thought that we'll kind of pander around some of the questions that have been going around in my mind around purpose and how do you build scale brands, how do you, being a technology brand, how do you build a sense of inclusivity around audiences across markets, and then meander a bit into startups and how are you helping them around, etc. And beyond that, getting to know a bit about the person, Sapna, right? Because I'm always fascinated about people's personal stories, and we see people at a certain stage in life, perched at a comfortable position, but there's always a backstory to how we've gotten them there, and that's something I'd be interested in having a conversation with you. So let's straight get into the conversation.
Of course, no, and thank you so much for having me and for this invite, and really exciting that you're doing this in this space. I think it's very rare in informal settings. We tend to get together, but in these informal settings and chats, I'm really looking
Yes.
forward to getting to know you better as well.
Yes. Yeah. So, Sapna, on the brand Google, right? And of course, Google has this whole purpose to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and meaningful, right? And I do understand that when you are a leader in a category and you're building the category in many parts of the world, you do things to evangelize the category. You do things to make it more palatable, useful to several audiences, and it's all in line of building the business. But from an outside in perspective, I also look at Google and I look at what you're doing with Internet Sathi and what you're doing with the rail Wi-Fi and the whole incubator programs you run. And I don't know if I'm just imagining, but does seem to be a sliver of a purpose being there. It seems to go beyond just mere business task of building the category, right? And while we see no woke advertising from Google on what this purpose is around, but we see a lot of action on the ground. And that fascinates me around the brand Google. So I wanted to have a conversation with you on how do you, as somebody who's leading the brand Google, see itself in markets such as India and Asia, and the whole job of category building, and does it drive down the idea of purpose at all?
No, you're absolutely right. And I want to thank you first for even recognizing this. Sometimes I wonder, do people see what we're doing and understand why it is we do the things that we do? And do they see the action, right? And it's always great, I think, to get the reinforcement from others, especially somebody like you that tells me that we're doing something right. But you started with our mission, right? And our mission is to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. And what does that mean? It means ultimately we're really trying to just help people, right? And like that's what this word is very important to us internally at Google. It's close to my heart. It's actually why I joined Google. Right? And previously in my life, I was working in financial services. I was working in categories that had impact on people and on users, but maybe in a way that was, not as major as what I saw at a place like Google. Ultimately, people use Google every day. Yes, they use our products multiple times a day. Our founders always say our products have to pass the toothbrush test, which means people should use our products at least twice a day. And if they do, then you're doing something right. If they don't do it at least a few times a day, that means you're doing something wrong. But ultimately, it's because at the core of our products is that we're helpful. We should help people find information. We should help people get to their aspirations through the information that they find. We should help people communicate with each other. We should help them learn, right? All of these things come to life through our products. And that is the core of what we do. It's the core of what my team spends time on, is to make our products reach more and more users. But ultimately, when we take a step back, it's not just about growth of our products. If you look at our goals are to really make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve, and not to take the fact that they use Google every day for granted. Ultimately, because of that, we have a power that makes the need for us to really use the assets that we have in a helpful way. And I'll talk about this in a few ways. Like, one biggest thing, and I think we saw this in the last year, is people come to us when there's a crisis. Like, we've seen it with COVID, we've seen it on areas like floods, right? When there is a crisis, we will see it in our search trends. People come to Google seeking answers. So on COVID, where we had a flood of people, coming to us. It was actually a revelation in my career and my time at Google. I've been at Google now 6 years, but last year with COVID, seeing how many people came and had questions, and the responsibility that we had to make sure that the information was correct and that we could get them answers, but we could also guide them in ways that would help them. They needed to figure out how to find a food shelter, how to find out how to get tested, how to find information around what COVID is, right? And so we took this with an extreme amount of responsibility to really play a role in doing more than just giving them an answer, but making sure that we could help them, right? And so we organized, people needed food, migrant workers were lost, right? They didn't know where to get their nearest meal. But that we realized with how many people were coming, millions and millions and millions of queries every day, we had a role to play. Even on floods, India is one of the most flood-ridden countries. I don't know if you know this, but we actually have a flood forecasting initiative where we use AI and we use machine learning to predict when and where flooding will occur. And we work with the Indian Central Water Commission to be able to look at the data over time. And that's what AI and machine learning is you look at the data, and we're able to then improve targeting by understanding likelihood of which regions will be impacted. And we've been working in partnership with the government of India to do this. Again, we have access to data and we have these strong partnerships, because of the strength that Google brings. And so we don't take it lightly. What we've done is said, how can we alert, Indians at times when they know that they're going to be impacted, so that they are not struggling as much as they will. They'll still struggle, and then we need to answer their questions as well. I think that's another one that we do. And I can go on and on. I'll give one more
Yeah.
example, which is around the role that we play with something like literacy. We have this voice assistant that we've built. Our Google Assistant really helps users. People can use their voice to ask anything to Google. But we realized that what can the role of an assistant play in education? Yes, people can use the Google Assistant to like turn on a song or play a YouTube video, but more than that, what if they could actually use a product like an assistant to help them learn to read, right? So we've built a product called Bolo, which helps children who don't have the benefit of having parents that are potentially able to help them read. The Google Assistant can play a role in terms of helping tell young students that are trying to learn to help and guide them. So as we think about building all of our products, we always ultimately say we have an important purpose to just go beyond the core of what we offer. There's a core of search, there's a core of YouTube, there's a core of the Google Assistant, there's the core of AI and machine learning, which will always be there. But we have a role to play in terms of helping in really important challenges that frankly, not just India, but countries in Asia are lacking behind. And this technology will end up helping advance everyone. That's the reason I joined Google, because technology can be a great enabler. Technology can help solve problems, but we have to apply what our strengths to these problems. And so, yes, we don't have traditional, we are an advertiser as well. We do spend money on regular traditional advertising,
Yeah.
but we also spend time doing these things, which I've spoken about, which really come back to that point of purpose that you mentioned at the beginning. And that's what keeps me going, every day. I find it difficult to think about where else would I go in my career, because I have such an amazing opportunity where I am right now to do things that really help people in moments of need.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I must tell you that from I work for toothpaste brands in India, and in India, people only brush their teeth once in a day. we've had a hard time getting Indians to brush twice, but I'm sure they're using Google products more than twice a day. So you already have a heads up on that. I'm always fascinated, right? I mean, of course, there's use of AI and machine learning to predict the next fashion range in Milan, or even at Google yourself, right? I mean, there's work on self-driving cars, and there's work on, I think I read some time back on that you could choose routes which are more carbon footprint friendly, and so on and so forth, and they're fascinating and I like them. But closer to our area of work and my area of work, which is India and Asia, what I find fascinating is the use of technology to bring everybody on the same dining table, so to say, metaphorically speaking, right? And when COVID hit, we work a lot with Whisper, which is a Procter and Gamble brand, and we realized that there was a patriarchy in pandemic as well. And while all the boys in Indian households got access to tablets and mobile phones and education, the girls were sent back to the chores. So not only were they missing the school, they were missing valuable education. Now imagine a whole generation of girls falling out of school for the entire year. That would be terrible for the country. And therefore, we use technology to build with Whisper something as what we call mobile shala, which means a mobile school. And we work towards bringing access in terms of learning, knowledge, and even hardware to the girls in the underprivileged section. So I'm always fascinated about using technology to shifting, so to say, in my own ways, power equation on the side of the people who don't have, right? And that as a role of a brand such as Google, is fascinating. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, and I do know that, I mean, we also work on brands having access to premium audiences, etc. That's our day job as well. But this whole aspect of inclusion, of bringing everybody on the same table, especially in markets like India, Asia, how does that pan out in your mind and for Google as a brand?
Yeah, no, so you have struck a real chord and connect with me on this question. It's the thing I think about every day, right? And, I think when you think about our mission as a company and the role that technology can play in leveling inequities across the world, it is such an important opportunity for us, but there's such huge gaps that exist today.
Yeah.
And this problem on gender inequality is one that is absolutely closest to my heart. I think, it impacts everything. It impacts access to technology, it impacts education, it impacts pay, it impacts women in the workforce across the board. I mean, when you look at so many dimensions, there's this gender inequality. And, one of the things when I first joined Google about 6 years ago that we saw was that there was a huge gender gap on the internet. And actually, not a lot of people know this. So it's probably
Mm,
most pronounced in Asia. And in India, it's actually the worst in Asia. And I think sometimes we don't think India is the worst at anything. But when we looked at the data, we saw that 1 out of every 10 internet users in rural India in 2015 was a woman. 1 in 10.
my God.
And
Yeah.
that was just mind boggling. And I remember we said, okay, we need to do something. We are very unclear, like, what could we do about this, right? And what we realized and what it was, we as Google couldn't really just go and teach people. We couldn't just tell people like getting online is a good thing. We couldn't put advertising traditionally on a problem like this. One of our aha moments through some piloting that we did was that we realized that women impacted other women, that networks
Yeah.
within communities, similar to all, there's lots of learnings on this with ASHA workers. And, I know that, a lot of brands have learned this over time, was that you have to get into the heart of the community. And so we created a program called Internet Sati, which was just meant to eradicate this gender divide that exists online. I can say we've made a lot of progress as a country. So now we've reached about 4 in every 10 internet users is a
That's
woman,
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
but there's still a long ways to go for things. When I look at now new categories like payments, you look at digital payments, that's another space where it's going to
Yeah.
take a long time. It's going to take a decade for us to solve this. But what we were able to do is to enable women in 300,000 villages to actually set up a sati who then trained every other woman. And what we realized was that they were being held back partially because of their own beliefs around what they could do or what the internet could do, partially because of the family structures and social pressures. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in focus groups men say, I don't want my wife or mother to have a smartphone because it would make them too smart. And,
Wow.
these are things that really sit with me. And all,
Yeah.
you hear a statement like that, and every social pressure, economic pressure, everything that women have faced across centuries and today, even in, even myself as a woman in tech, I experience, right? It all kind of just comes to a head, right? That whether you're a
Yeah.
woman in rural India or you're a woman in urban India, whether you're 10 years old or 50 years old, like there's these things that holding women back. But once you give women access to information, the things that they'll do with it can really surprise you. And we've seen once women get access to the internet and they learn, they are starting businesses. They're coming up with ideas of things that they can do. They're figuring out how to become a contributing member of their family economically. And so it all comes back to just the same thing of information. It's like water, it's a right. It's a basic right. And women have this courage within them to do more. They want to do more. They've just been held back. And so I think technology can be an empowerer here. And I've seen, I can't tell you how many stories that I've heard of women who really never thought they could actually bring a dime to their family's income now have shown that father or husband who didn't want their wife to be too smart, they've actually, now you see the men changing their own perceptions. And they're like, wait, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is a good thing for my family. Maybe, we can advance together. And that is the ultimate aha, that if the entire society sees the benefit of equity, then we will move forward. And so, we're on a journey still, but we're trying to now move from just digital literacy. That's a first step. We now want to help women. We've taken a task of helping 1 million women entrepreneurs. And we want to make 1 million women entrepreneurs successful through the use of technology as a next step. And so you'll see more from us here. But ultimately, I think we all need to reflect on the inequities that exist, and how we all can come together on this. I think this is a place you mentioned how we've worked with you in several areas
Yeah.
as well. This is an area where, as brands, as partners, we need to come together. This won't be anything that we can solve if we don't collectively, as an ecosystem, work together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I've always had this theory in my mind around the idea of brands being more socio-capitalist brands, right? Where you actually bring the power of capitalism for social good, and brands have that role and opportunity. And to your point on women seeking economic equity, right? We did a lot of work with a brand called Iodex for GSK. Iodex used to be in this whole idea that there's very regressive idea of the woman that she does the pocha and then she has a backache and goes back to doing pocha because of Iodex. And we did a lot of work with women, and all of them kept coming back and saying we want to add economic value back to the household. And we ran a piece of narrative where there was a story, but the crux of the story was that the woman tells the husband that if this house gives protection to both of us, why should the EMI be only on your shoulders? I have an
Mm,
equal right. And that piece, Sapna, I can't tell you, it resonated so well with women in India. I mean, of course, the brand jumped 45% in its market share and so on and so forth. But just the narrative, right? People just kind of own that narrative. So absolutely bang on that insight that it's not just about empowerment for the sake of empowerment. They want a real play in the economics of it, and in that sense, the whole idea of women as entrepreneurs is fantastic, right, and fascinating.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I want to switch gears a bit, Sapna, because I mean we can keep talking about this. This is really so close to your heart and my heart, and all the work we are doing together as well on this. But I mean, you mentioned Google doing payments, and we know you do search and mail and so on and so forth. And uh, in my mind, the academic theories that we were brought up on in marketing always said that brands are locked into categories, right? And many brands will spend millions of millions on research and with brand consultants when they'll try to expand the brand and say, does it, I mean, can Dettol even be a soap, or can Dettol even be a washing liquid, and so on and so forth. And I've done a lot of work on that brand. That comes to my mind. But increasingly, and I'll give you a few examples. I was doing a rural and a small town project early in my life, and I went to the backyards of UP, Uttar Pradesh, and I found a dhoti. Right, a dhoti is like a wraparound that Indian men wear, and it was branded Tata Birla. Right, so somebody imagined a merger between two big Indian corporate houses, and somebody thought that a Tata Birla dhoti will sell well in the backyards of Bihar and UP and so on and so forth, and it was one of the hottest selling brands there, right? I mean, and you could see, right, you could see like a pressure cooker being branded Maruti, or a grocery bag with Reebok name. And I was looking up recently, and there are Google saris, right? I don't know if you if you know
Oh
about
no,
it.
I haven't seen
Uh,
these. I'm gonna have to take a look. I'm gonna have to take a look.
now, I mean, at a brand custodian level, you can say, "Oh my God, how could they use my name and this plagiarism and so on and so forth?" We'll leave that debate aside. But to my mind, what it reflects is the depth of trust that the brand has, right? And the fact that people imagine that Tatas can make anything from, say, airlines to salt to dhoti, or Google can do anything from search to mail to payments to maybe saris, right? And therefore, the whole idea of stretchability of brands, and the fact that people don't lock brands to categories, people lock brands to perhaps trust, or I don't know
Hmm.
what else your understanding is in this zone. So I wanted to explore a bit with you, how do you understand Google as a brand going across categories? You're in hardware, you have a Pixel phone, you're in payments. I mean, they are very, very different categories, and yet you manage the brand seamlessly. One is the category spread, the other spread also is class, right? I mean, Google as a brand is interesting to a millennial as much as it is to, say, a 45-year-old or 50-year-old audience. So you cut across audiences as well. So tell me a little bit more about how do you see the brand? How do you manage this whole scale bit?
Okay, this is the thing that keeps me up at night, and it's the thing that is most
Yeah.
exciting about my job as well, right? I think we also have multiple brands that sometimes people don't even realize that sit with Google, like
Yes.
YouTube, right? I think not everyone realizes that YouTube is a Google brand, and so we have this. It's an opportunity, and it's also we have to think about how does each brand have their own place, right? And that's how I really have to think about our portfolio of brands. Like a lot of companies have portfolios of brands, and different people manage those portfolios, and they might not connect, or maybe they do, right? But I think at Google, actually, the heart of all of our brands is they do connect in some way, shape, or form. Not everybody will understand maybe those dynamics, and maybe our customers don't need to understand how they connect. But at the heart of what we do is Google. All of our products ultimately ladder to that mission, right? Information, like for everyone, right? And you can, whether you look at YouTube or you look at maps or you look at search, like it all ladders up to that. And so that's the heart of, and helpfulness, right? I think that's the other, I'll just
Yeah.
say it again, like that word. I can't tell you how many times we use that word helpfulness
Yeah.
at Google is the other thing that we keep together. But we have different strategies for different products based on the stage of evolution that they're in, based on the role that they may play in different countries. So I really look at, I have to prioritize, right? Like ultimately we all, as I think about brand Google, I have to figure out where should my team spend most of their time. and where do we have the most work to do, right? Some products, we don't have to spend a lot of time marketing them
Mm.
because they have that. You mentioned that they have the toothbrush test just checked off the box, and we realize the role is not to grow a product, but perhaps to ensure that it's understood and to make sure that we are a responsible player, right? I think like we don't always think about just growth, but we think about responsibility and making sure the role that we have, whether it comes to safety, misinformation, right? Like, the marketing tactics might look very different, like from product to product based on, their growth patterns, based on where, the concerns that users have, and based on that, what you mentioned, trust, right? Like, but the thing that pulls all of this together is that these products play a role in people's lives if they're all connected. Like hardware, some people might think
Yeah.
hardware is very unconnected to what we do. Oh, like why is Google into hardware? That doesn't make sense. But actually it does, because when you think about your experience and using our technology apps, it all comes to life on hardware. And we believe that we can build richer experiences for users on hardware. When you think about cross products and interactions, maps and search actually have a lot in common, right?
Yeah.
And we think about those connections as brands. And so ultimately, we operate as a portfolio, we focus where we need to focus, and our metrics might not look like traditional companies. Sometimes we're chasing growth, sometimes we're not chasing growth, sometimes we're chasing trust, and
Yeah.
products are growing on their own. I think we're in a very interesting space where internet access is just, it's continuing to explode. And even though it's exploding, there's still so much of a gap when it comes to access. And so that's another focus area that we have, is not necessarily only to grow our products, but to grow the ecosystem, right? When you think about Android, and Android is also a
Yeah.
platform that Google has. Our role there is to enable an ecosystem which will enable technology growth on the whole, right? And so as we grow Android, that helps developers who are developing apps in technology. So our customers are developers, consumers, advertisers, across the board, the educators who use Google products in the classroom, right? And so we have to think about all these segments and what is our role with each. And so if you looked at my brand plans, you would say this is not the norm. This is not how business is traditional. Because usually it's like, okay, we're chasing revenue and we're chasing usage. But
Yeah.
actually, as Google, we sometimes are chasing ecosystem growth and making sure that
Yeah.
there's a healthy ecosystem. India still has such a long way to go before
Yeah.
everyone has access to the internet. You don't find this in other parts of the world, and Asia as well, like Indonesia, Vietnam. Access
Yeah.
and the ecosystem are very important. So therefore, our role is to help developers, right? So I always tell people that I feel schizophrenic in my job, because on a given day, I'm thinking about so many different audiences, and there's no age target. You'll never see a brief from Google which says we are targeting 15 to 24-year-olds between this and that. Like that will just never happen, because
Yeah.
that word universal in our mission is like we're essentially trying to do everything for everyone, which is a tall task. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's very fascinating. But I hear you when you're saying that the at the core of it is the idea to organize information and make sure everything you do is helpful for people, right? And that's the
Yeah.
core. And you're saying that you're seeing each of the offerings as connected. So those are
Yeah.
interesting takeaways, I would say, for anybody who wants to learn on how to manage something as complex as this and maybe feel schizophrenic internally, but from outside, it looks all seamlessly woven together.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you think that. I'm really somebody like you telling me that.
Yeah.
It actually brings a smile to my face, which not everybody is
Yeah.
listening right now will see, but that's the existential challenge, I think, as brand leaders, right? Like, does it come across that way? So I am
Yeah.
open to advice though. So if anybody who's listening has advice, do share it my way as well.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll take a small break, Sapna, at this point and come back and continue our conversation, shift it to the next gear.
Great, looking forward.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred and Sia. Thank you so much for making this possible. We've had an amazing week on the network. Do check out The Note with Mahrukh Inayat. She speaks to Prabhat Kumar, the man leading child protection at one of India's leading NGOs, Save the Children. On The Habit Coach, Ashton was joined by Rajat Mittal Shah to talk about some superfoods in Ayurveda like turmeric and ashwagandha. On Paisa Vaisa, host Anupam Gupta has a digital gold special in two parts, one with Ashraf Rizvi, founder and CEO of Digital Swiss Gold, and Gilded, and one with Deepak Abbott, co-founder of India Gold. Listen to the first part of the Father's Day special of Agla Station Adulthood with Natasha and her father, Dr. Vipul Roy Rathod. You should also check out Cyrus Says' episode with Mukul Chadda. He talks about upcoming shows Sunflower and Sherni. Our Kannada podcast, Thale Artist, celebrates 100 episodes, and we had a reunion of hosts Pawan, Ganesh, and Surya who shared their favorite moments from the past. Shiva Mehta is back with the second season of Smile India. The show is available in both English and Hindi. On this episode, she talks about the conversion from bag teas to bagless ones and how we should ditch the plastic and have a great tea experience. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Hi, Sapna. Welcome back. It was a very enriching conversation, the first half. I want to shift a bit of a gear, Sapna, here. And, this whole idea, I mean, we've all been brought up thinking differentiation in marketing, and competitiveness has been the bedrock of business as we've been taught. I mean, let's talk a bit, Sapna, around, how the whole idea of marketing and digital marketing has changed in the online space, and more specifically from a measurement perspective, because we've all understood how to market on an online space, and it's evolving every day. But the big question there is what do we measure? And an adjacent question to my mind there is, startup is a big ecosystem, especially markets such as India. And a lot of startups, for example, we work with, there are 3 people, 4 people teams, may not have a marketer on board, and so on and so forth. And they were to focus just on pure digital marketing, they feel inundated, right? They feel a bit lost. How do you start? Where do you start? Do I need to do SEO, if at all, if I'm B2B? Basic stuff like that. And I know you are hugely invested in the startup ecosystem through accelerators, etc. But I don't know, is there a role for a Google Marketing Academy of sorts as a platform? So 2 questions. One is measurement, and what do we measure and how do we measure? How's that shifting? And more specifically, the whole startup community and marketing angle there, because my experience being of late working with a lot of startups is that it's inundating for them. It's complex.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, so on the question of measurement, another myth I'll bust is that, usually I get, oh, you guys must have figured out everything when it comes to your marketing because you're Google. So you must be able to measure and track and do everything with special powers. Like you don't have any problems. But actually, everybody on my team, we've come from other brands. We've been, faced with the same challenges, and there aren't answers to everything today, right? I think there's an assumption that there is, right? I think this is an evolution, right? If you look across, even my own Google products, my ability to measure them drastically is different from product to product. Actually, as marketers, that's our biggest challenge that we have today, is to take these data sources and be able to create models that help us make the right answers. And you'll need to do this working with a variety of partners. So that's on the measurement side, I think there's no silver bullet. I think there is an evolution that we're all on. I think tracking is hard unless you work directly with your technology partners internally to be able to do better work. And I think a lot of the answers actually exist within brands, not outside. I think sometimes there's this, oh, well, we need to, maybe a third party will help me do this. A lot of this rests inside companies as well. On your second question, I think in terms of help for businesses and small businesses, I hear you, right? I think, again, I think everybody thinks the big brands have it all figured out. I think even the big brands and the big companies are still figuring on how to work in this ecosystem. But what we've seen is 2 things. There is what's happened, especially in the last 12 to 18 months. It used to be that we needed to try and push the ecosystem to think about digital. In the last 18 months, we're now seeing this pull. I can't tell you how many people are actually looking to be trained on digital, right? And so we actually have created, because of this demand, we've seen millions of small businesses asking, help me to be able to market digitally, right? And so we've created a platform called Digital Unlocked, which is a set of videos and tutorials helping people, not just on Google's platforms, but across the board. Like at the end of the day, as a company, we try not to be selfish and say, oh, this is how you can get onto our platforms. We've made it agnostic. So whether you're doing social media
Yeah.
or you're doing other things, so Digital Unlocked is a platform, and we've seen this pull in the last like year, which is kind of mind-boggling to me. And I think it's
Yeah.
amazing. The second thing that we realized is, again, choice of channel. Not everyone is even online looking for these answers. Small businesses are looking to be trained maybe in more traditional ways. We've actually worked with Doordarshan to create a program called Must They Digital,
Wow, that's
where we
amazing.
have less, like we're trying to explain to people, and teach, because a lot of this is, you need to be talked through these things, right? You need to
Yeah.
have, like, this is all community support, right? So we, getting speakers and who have gone through this before, other enablers in the ecosystem. So again, we're working across a number of our partners to say, how do we collectively, help accelerate? People are just hungry. They're curious. They
Yeah.
need education. But traditional education, where we're like lesson plans, are not going to work, right? Like we need to think outside the box, and that's why we're trying different methods to be able to. I think video is a big way that people are learning, right? I think,
Yeah.
and so we're thinking, we've built videos to help people, and we
Yeah.
also showed some great case studies. I think that sometimes people think it's not
Mm.
possible. This is hard. This is so complicated. I don't know how to do this. I have to hire somebody who's tech savvy. What we're also trying
Yeah.
to show is that there's so many case studies of businesses that are doing amazing things that actually have just done it themselves, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you have to show people role models that are doing this. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing we're focused on.
And this space is only going to go bigger, right? Because there's so many spurt of entrepreneurs doing direct to consumer. They understand that digital is a great platform to generate demand and be able to fulfill it. The infrastructure to be able to transport, distribute, etc., is now being set up. So I mean, anybody pretty much with an idea and some time at hand and ability to do something is putting up a shop there, right? And this is going to proliferate in a huge way. And thank you for the point on the effectiveness and the measurement. I mean, it gives me a lot of comfort because my clients keep asking me, you haven't got it figured. I can tell them even Google is a work in progress. So I'm going to borrow from that. Sapna, I mean, moving ahead in our conversation, and it's been a great chat today. But I wanted to probe a little bit. How have you navigated being a woman leader? Through the times, and I'll come back to that question again in a industry specific way because I mean, in my business, advertising, right? I mean, I've personally had so many fantastic colleagues, right, who've dropped out, right, because the work environment was so harsh, and we miss that ability on the table, right? I mean, I would have loved to have some of them as our partners today in the business, some absolutely spectacular talent, right? And as an industry and as a business, we are to blame. And I'm actively thinking, for the younger women in our workforce, I mean, tomorrow if they plan a family and so on and so forth, how do we have policies so that they are able to come back and we don't lose such terrific talent, right? So how do we proactively, as an organization, brand, industry, think about it? But to start that more with your perhaps journey, and how do you manage to navigate this, and what inspiration could many of us, not just women but even men, can derive from it on how do we behave as organizations to make it better?
Thank you for asking this. We could have talked about business all this whole chat. So, but thanks for bringing this topic up. I started my career in the U.S. I was born and raised in the U.S. And actually, I never felt like a woman in business until I moved to India. And that
Yeah.
was a bit of and I always wondered about this, like, why was that the case? Well, it was the case because I had an amazing role model. My mother was a woman in tech. She actually, when I was 2 years old, she was studying and became a software developer. And she was a woman in tech back in the 70s. Like
Amazing.
that doesn't exist anymore. Actually, there was a lot of women in tech then, and they all it's come down since. Anyways, my point is, like, I then entered consulting. I didn't really see gender inequity at the lower ranks because there was a lot of girls who were out of college with me but when I started to reach the middle point of my career, and that's when I moved to India. So it's not only because of India that I started feeling like a woman, but I started reaching the midpoint of my career, and there started to be less women in the room. and I did see the dropout that you're talking about. And have there been moments that I've thought of dropping out? I absolutely. And because you don't think you can do it all. I think
Yeah.
there's this myth that you can do it all. Now, I'm a mother of twins and I work in tech and I'm a woman in tech and I am a leader. It is lonely, I will say at times. I can't tell you how many times I've been the only woman at the table. I
Yeah.
have had to develop a thicker skin. The reason I do it actually, and why I will keep doing it for a long time, is because I can't tell you how many women, all they tell me is the fact that you're around is what keeps me going. Because
Yeah.
if you can do it, then I can do it. So I'm like, okay, I now I have a responsibility to be able to show that. But when I think about why I've been able to do it, I've been able to do it because I've had sponsors. And so somebody like you and your agency's leadership and every organization needs to think about sponsorship of
Yeah.
not just women talent or female talent, but across the board. At pivotal points in my career, I have had male allies, they're sometimes called, or sponsors who were looking out for me. And I'll tell you, the best story I have is I was 6 months pregnant with my twins, and the CMO job in my company became available at that time. And I didn't think to apply because I was about to go out on leave. And I was like, why? I was in financial services. Of course, nobody is going to give me this job. I'm about to go out on leave. I'm having twins. I actually had determined in my head who I thought was good for the job. And my name was not on that list, right? And then I got a call one day from the president of the company. And he said to me, Sapna, I'm really disappointed that your name is not on this candidate slate. And he said, do I need to tell you that you're the most qualified person for this job? And I will remember that moment like
Yeah.
for the rest of my life. And he asked me that question, and it was the absolute right question because I had lost all confidence in myself because I was about to go on leave, because I thought that there were better people than me. I had come up with every reason why I shouldn't get that job. And it was myself that was holding myself back. It wasn't the system. Here I
Yeah.
was in financial services with somebody who was actually telling me I was the best person for the job. I ended up getting the job. That job, if I hadn't had that happen, I wouldn't be at Google today. And the rest of my journey. So that one call changed everything for me. And I remember that all the time. There's moments when I'm starting to doubt myself and my capabilities, and I remember that call. And so women need that. They need
Yeah.
somebody to tell them that they can do it. They need support. They need confidence build up every once in a while, right? And if you are
Yeah.
working, I find that you don't always get that, right? And it's something I've instilled with the managers and leaders on my team now, and I see how it plays out, and I see the impact that just small things, how it
Yeah.
makes such a big difference, right? And so that would be my advice to all women is sometimes it's our own thoughts that hold ourselves back. I call them the gremlins in our head. But my advice to any male leader that is, that's there is like, you have to think about the role that you play. Every step of my career has been because of support I have received, push that I've received, honest feedback, also telling me what I could do better. Like, don't just brush it under the table. Say, I want you to do this. I want you to take this. I've gotten stretched responsibilities. I've been asked to take on more. And there's times where I'm like, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a bad mother. But I also then look at my daughter and the way she will, she's confident because of, she sees me as a role model. And I think back to my own mother. The reason I am who I am is because of my own mother. A woman in tech in the 1970s shown me, like, who am I to complain, is as I say. And so role models are everything. And the more women we remove ourselves from the workforce, the less role models there are, and the worse that this is going to get. And so this is a cycle that needs to be changed.
Yeah. No, this is very interesting, Sapna. I mean, and my key learning, we all need motivation from time to time, right? Why only women? I mean, running an agency is so tough, I can tell you. Right? I mean,
You're
I need
doing a
someone to tell
great
me it's
job,
okay.
Dheeraj. Seriously, you are like an
Yeah.
inspiration to so many.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. But I think the big learning for me is that be that sponsor, right? Is for leaders like ourselves to, and the organizations like ourselves, is be that sponsor. And in fact, I'm lucky that a lot of women in my leadership team, they're putting their hand up and saying, I want to do more. give me
Yep.
this. And I'm like, are you sure? I'm saying, okay, take it, but build that support. So I'm liking that, right? I mean, we're going to campuses, Sapna, and young girls, and the way they're presenting, they are articulate, I mean, we went to some of the campuses last year. We wanted to hire 8. We ended up hiring 10 because the talent was so spectacular. You cannot say no to them.
That's
So
amazing.
that is happening as well. And I
But
believe,
that's the thing. You bring them in now that the need
yeah,
is to keep them there. And there's actually, the one of the myths that exists is you talk about the glass ceiling. You need to help women in leadership, right? That's usually what is being discussed. Actually, McKinsey did a research not recently, it's several years old, but it talks about that it's not the top of the ladder, it's not the glass ceiling that we need to talk about. Yes, that's important too. But actually, the first step to manager, McKinsey calls the broken rung. They say
yeah,
on that ladder that women are actually, it's that first step on the ladder where women get held back. And so I'd urge all organizations to look at your data and look at what's happening at that first step. And is there
yeah,
equity? I think as Google, we're trying to play a bigger role. We have our work cut out for ourselves, but play a role in terms of how can we share the knowledge that we have in terms of helping women. And
yeah,
that broken rung is very important. And I think a lot of people don't think about that. You're looking at
yeah,
talent at the top. You need to
yeah.
start from even, early days.
And I mean, while that's the all positive and good, I also worry sometimes, unfortunately, about some bit of a woke sense here as well. I mean, suddenly you see a conference with some 17 men, and there are two women, and I mean, it smells of not an earnest approach. Similarly, a lot of brands, for example, right? I mean, just kind of riding the bandwagon. Of saying, okay, this is the right thing to say, rather than actually doing enough in
Yeah.
that space. And therefore, my point is say that you would first rather do than talk, and staying
Yeah.
away from woke in this is so critical, because otherwise you're going to end up harming the whole narrative and the revolution.
Absolutely. This is not a checkbox thing, though I think sometimes
Yeah,
the checkbox, so let's have, we have 10 people, let's have one woman speaker, right? That's it. Let's
yeah,
check the box, right? Or let's like, and how many times do we see that, right? And when you think about like, what I always say is when you think about marketing, and our job is not just to make a campaign that talks about this, right? Or to make an ad that calls out gender inequality. Like we have to do, right? For the longest time, I have always believed like I don't have the right as Google to say anything about gender equity until I do something about it. Now, today, like 5 years later, after we worked with Internet Sati, we've enabled 30 million women. I now feel like, okay, I'm out now, my voice is important. I'm going to talk about what I've learned, I feel I have equity because I've done something, right? And when people ask me, "Oh, that was a very good CSR initiative that you created," and I say, "That's not. It wasn't CSR. That wasn't corporate social responsibility. That's what people think. They think that's why I've done this.
yeah. It's core to your purpose. Yeah,
It's
it's
core.
core to
It
your
is. It
purpose. Yeah.
actually is our core business, right? We
Yes.
did not spend CSR dollars on that. It was our core business, right? Because that is our business, right? Like, and I hope more like companies, brand custodians think that way. Like, I really hate that question. Like, oh, is this your CSR? What are you
Yeah.
doing for CSR? Like, it's not about
Yeah.
CSR. It has to be core. It has to be core.
Thank you so much, Sapna, for such a fantastic, free flowing, candid conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah,
We'll take a
fun.
break and maybe come back and do a rapid fire with you.
Great. No, thank you. This has been fun. It's been great to chat with you. Thanks, Dheeraj.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Zarina Punawala, host of the Empowering Series podcast on the IVM network. I happen to be a peak performance coach and leadership coach by profession, and I'm here to share with you productivity tools, life-altering techniques, and real-life hacks to help you achieve your maximum potential in everything you do, your relationships, professions, careers. So tune in every Monday to unleash your inner power. Be safe, be well, be empowered.
Sapna, welcome back to the conversation and time for a rapid fire.
Okay.
Here are your questions. A woman leader who you admire the most.
So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she is not just somebody who's helped shape the road for women through law, and she's on the Supreme Court in the U.S., but she's a woman who realized she needed to ask for help from different people. She told her husband she needed help. He helped her and supported her. She was able to do it all, not because she was really smart about how she did it. She realized that she would have a bigger impact on the world,
Yeah.
but she realized she couldn't do everything. And I think, coming back to what I had said earlier, there's this belief that women can do it all. And she kind of said,
Yeah.
I can't do it all. I'm going to focus on making the world better. I'm going to change the laws to advance people. But hey, I'm going to ask for help from my spouse. I'm going to ask for help from other things. And because she knew
Yeah.
that she couldn't do it all. So she's an inspiration to me that way.
Amazing. Awesome. The greatest myth about being a leader.
That people are born with confidence and born with traits that make them a leader. I think all of this is a muscle, and they are shaped over time. I think there's a belief that people are born with certain characteristics that make them a leader, and they have these characteristics. Actually, I always tell people I'm not confident. I actually am probably the least confident person that exists in the world, but I don't let it be shown. Everybody thinks I'm confident. I'm not. So there's this myth that people are a certain way. They believe these things. You don't actually know the heart and the truth of the problem, or how somebody's working on something. I'm still working on my confidence. I haven't been born with these things.
That's so powerful, Sapna, to say that leadership is actually a muscle that you can develop. Amazing. Yeah. 3 things on your bucket list.
Wow. Well, it's changed. I feel like in the last year. Makes you reflect on what you want to do. Number one, I want to get my PhD. And I want to I can't wait for the day I can just step back. I tell my daughter, when she goes to college, I'm gonna go get my PhD, because I want to take a step back and think again. I think sometimes we're just doing, and you feel like you're running around. I want to take a step back and think. So that's one. I want to become a professor. Ideally, that's another thing on my bucket list. They kind of go hand in hand, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
And I want to have a house in 4 continents where I will go every season. That's my
Nice.
I actually I'm a world person. I'm I can't stay in one place. And I've been shaped by my global experience. I've worked across from New York to New Delhi to Singapore. It's shaped who I am. And so
Yes.
I want to, I think, be geographically global. It's not just about travel, because I think you can travel, you can visit places, but if you live there, so I want to live in different places for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's like having multiple anchors in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. One talent that you think it's too late for you to acquire and you would want to pursue.
That's a really good one. So a lot of people don't know this about me. I mean, I'm a classical Bharatanatyam dancer.
Wow.
But I would have loved to actually have done different types of dance, and I didn't have either the time or space growing up. So I would love to learn ballroom dancing or jazz or even ballet, and hopefully it's not too late. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And the last one, do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, I have many. I keep actually quotes in front of my desk. I have a bunch. I was thinking, which one should I talk about? But I think the one that I always reference, if people talk about, I want to find myself. And as I talk to my younger team, they're always like, how did you know that you wanted, to do this? How did you find your destiny? I'm like, I still haven't found what I may necessarily want to do with my life. And so the quote that I have is, life isn't about finding yourself. It's about creating yourself. And I think we're constantly evolving. We're creating ourselves.
Yes.
And from decade to decade, I'm not looking to find something that's out there, but it's we're responsible for shaping ourselves. So life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sapna, for such a fantastic conversation. I learned a lot today. I'm sure people who listened, it sparked conversations and thinking in their minds as well. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to the day we can meet for dinner. This has been fun. And while in this
Yes.
virtual world, we continue to meet these ways. I look
Yeah.
forward to my next trip to Mumbai and have dinner with you
that'd be
and
lovely.
continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Sapna.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. I learned so much speaking to Sapna about the brand Google and about herself. That a brand such as Google doesn't always chase revenue. Sometimes it chases building an ecosystem, say empowering Android developers in Southeast Asian markets. While at other times, it is looking to empower women entrepreneurs. The brand has these ideas such as organizing the world's information and being useful, and these act as the connective glue or the guiding principle, if you may say, behind everything that it does, from search to payments to devices. That was very interesting to know. I also learned that Google, which appears as such a sharp brand, does not target only 18 to 25-year-olds, but talks to everyone, everywhere. I love the thoughts that Sapna brought out on leadership. The fact that all of us need that one sponsor, that someone who tells us that yes, we can do it. And that leadership is actually a muscle, that we can develop it. We needn't be born with it. This is Speakeasy with me, Dheeraj Sinha. I'll be back with another conversation next week, so stay tuned. What thoughts did this conversation trigger in your mind? Do tag me on my Twitter handle Dheeraj_Sinha or leave your comments at speakeasywithdheerajsinha.com. If you like this podcast, you can explore other amazing podcasts on the IVM Podcast app and website. You can follow them on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for listening.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset, and everything sport.
So tune in to The Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.
If you love cricket, listen up. The Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is here for you. Hosted by DJ, Varun, and me, Ashwin, we bring a fun, fresh fan's point of view to talking all things cricket. Sometimes it's just the three of us, sometimes we have guests, including current and former international cricketers. For new episodes every week, check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.